maybe we'll keep this in while I say this, but I'm going to try to make this as easy to edit as possible. So I'm just going to try to keep us on point. And I'm going to say to the listeners, I am here with the wonderful returning guest, the mind behind Greek myth comics, Laura Jenkinson Brown. But I realize I say that and I always use Laura, but would you rather go by L, or is it just sort of what you put on your books?
Do you know, I've dug myself into a hole now.
Relatable again.
because I'm a teacher, I was like, I'm gonna keep this life separate.
Yeah.
And at school I go by initials. So before I got married, my initials were LEJ. I was literally Ledge, which was delightful. And then I got married. Now I'm LJB, which is still cool. But now I am Jenks online.
Yeah, I know.
But, and then I was like, well, what do I put on the front cover of my book? Do I put Laura? No, I'll just put L. But then my website is Laura, and I just don't know anymore.
And I don't think you need to. So that works. I'll call you Laura because we're friends, and that's what I would call you. But also, as somebody who did not think hard enough before putting the word baby in her podcast title, like I live with this forever. And I just have to use the words myths baby a lot. And I don't love it. Mostly because sometimes people call me myths baby as if it's my name. And I'm also like, I know I did that to myself because all of my handles are that. But it's weird. So anyway.
I'm trying not to giggle because I know you hate it. And I just think it's such a delight.
I live with it. It's fine. I know everyone loves it. It's good. It is funny though when I have to tell people like what my career is. And I say it and they like assume it's a hobby, and I'm like, I know it's not. I recognize it sounds wacky that I make a living off of this. I know it's super cool and weird. But
you haven't sung the song.
I know, I won't. I don't sing it in front of other people. No, it's fine. Okay. I do it. Hello, welcome. This is Let's Talk About Myths, baby. And I'm your host, Liv. Yeah!
Oh, I ruined it by talking to her. I'm so sorry.
No, it was perfect. Because I really do prefer to do that just to myself. No, I mean, this episode, to the listeners, is sort of a second attempt. We did record an Odyssey episode, but this is a better one. Or will be. It hasn't happened yet. But basically we had to kind of keep ourselves more on track because I think we talked for like 3 hours and didn't achieve enough because we just were talking.
We had a really nice time.
We did. It was great. It was a good hangout.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like basically now that's just just a friend hangout. But this is, you and I, all the listeners know all too well now that you and I have been both working on. I mean, you have been working on the Odyssey far longer than me in this context, but certainly for the last year we have both been very heavily in it, and I wanted to do an episode about the Odyssey broadly, but about specifically kind of how you and I have gone about breaking down the Odyssey and adapting it in these unique ways, with the bonus of we are recording this like a day after the new Christopher Nolan trailer dropped. And so at the end, we will talk about that. But until then, let me tell you about the full of color and delightfully fun and a little tongue-in-cheek Odyssey, aka exactly what Homer's Odyssey is, that I have written for children. Because I'm comfortable and confident in saying that my Odyssey is going to be a truer adaptation to the original than Christopher Nolan's. And yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Obviously what you've done is very different. So I don't know. This is me trying to guide a conversation very poorly, but maybe we start, yours is so unique. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you went about making your, I know that there was issues around calling it a choose your own adventure, but I probably can just colloquially call it that.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So what I have not done is write a choose your own adventure book.
You've not. It's not.
I have not done that.
No.
Besides, I preferred fighting fantasy when I was a kid. No, So I'm a teacher, as we might know at this point, and I teach ancient history and I teach classical civilizations and I teach the Odyssey, or at least I did until recently, which is a whole bone of contention and I'm dying inside. But um, one thing that I found really interesting was, having taught it repeatedly for about 11 years, you start to notice different things about it.
Oh
and
my
I
God,
was,
yeah.
oh my God, I still like go, oh my, how did I miss this?
Truly.
Constant arguments with people on Instagram, but in a lovely way where we all learn something new. So the idea of him thinking this way and that and having these choices, it suddenly occurred to me that like he doesn't always just do things, he thinks about it first. And he's so unique in that aspect. Like if you see like Achilles gets angry, tries to kill Agamemnon, immediately has to be dragged back by his hair by Athene, literally the metaphor for second thought in this matter. But Odysseus doesn't. And when I'm teaching it to my students, most of the time we're focusing on the question, what is Odysseus like? Like, what is his character shown to be? Which is a very, very open question. Of course, it's related to in the chapters you have read, because they don't get to read every book of the Odyssey.
Fair.
We read about 5. There's nearly always the narrative, though, and then later chapters as well, which is a fascinating comparison because he's telling the narrative and he's the only one who survived it. And then in the rest of the story, it's much more balanced between lots of different characters, and we see him through a different pair of eyes. So this idea that you could maybe consider what could have happened if you'd made the other choice was kind of where this grew out of. And as usual, it was my husband's idea. I have to give him credit for it. He's so brilliant and so supportive. And we share loads of really similar interests from when we were kids. We only met quite late in life, so and we were
I wouldn't comfortably say quite late in life, given
no,
your age,
I was just
but
thinking
I'll just
that like that makes me sound like I'm retired.
I was like, you're not old enough to speak like that. But later in the life that you have accomplished at this time,
Yes, we met at a good time when we were both developed people.
Oh gosh, isn't that the key?
I think your brain finishes. I think they worked out now. Your brain finishes developing at the age of 35. So that was
really
perfect moment. Yeah.
Wow.
So technically, you are a teenager until that point.
I thought it was 27.
No, they've made it later now. It's brilliant.
Wow. I mean, as someone who just keeps getting older and keeps thinking, man, am I ever going to feel like I'm older and not just like the same like childlike person who also somehow has way too much like lived experience. It's such a weird thing getting older. Anyway,
a 16-year-old with gammy knees and constant memory loss is basically
and like menopausal symptoms, but I'm definitely only 16. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, good grief. Let's steer back. So we were at a wedding and we were staying overnight. That's lovely. And he I can't remember what we were talking about, but he said, what if you did a choose your own adventure? No, I didn't say that. What if you did a choose your own path version of the Odyssey? 6 years later, I finished it. But I literally sat down and started working out what that might look like. That was it. We were looking at another, like a grown-up choose your own path book, which was called Choose Your Own Apocalypse by Rob Sears.
Oh, delightful.
With lots of men who are somehow still in power 6 years later. Shocking. So, and of course, because I am like this, it couldn't just be a simple, which decision, this decision, oh, you're dead, or you aren't dead. It had to be an incredibly detailed extravaganza of ancient Greek culture, references to all the themes from the original Odyssey. It had to embrace all of the literary techniques that I teach. It's got to have similes in it. It's got to reference the ones that are there. It had to be like you were literally inside the Odyssey making those decisions for Odysseus.
Well, and what I'm interested in, I just want to like rephrase, because I think it's something that I've really noticed in yours, particularly as compared to working on mine. But I feel like because of everything you've done, is that it's a lot bigger than the Odyssey. Like what you're really doing is working with Odysseus's character and like his experience, because I know you also like went well beyond the Odyssey. There's so many moments where you've gone to other surviving texts and things, right? Like when it kind of veers off, obviously, because the Odyssey only covers this, obviously the choices that he makes, but you did go deeper even, right? So it's even more, it's bigger than the Odyssey, I guess is what I've said twice now in a roundabout way.
Yeah. I'm just going to point out that I
Yeah,
can't see any wavelengths on my
that's
recording
fine.
side of thing. Is it? Okay, fine.
Yeah, sometimes that happens, and I don't know why the other person can't see it, but I can see yours, so it's fine.
Super. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, technically, it is also longer than the Odyssey because it has
Yeah.
maybe like 2 Odysseys in it, really, in terms of length. But it goes through every single book of the Odyssey where Odysseus is. So, of course, if he's not in the action, you don't see that bit, but it's implied and sometimes you hear about it. But then when it comes to what else could have happened, I couldn't do the original structure because if you're Odysseus, you start off on Ogygia with Calypso, and so you've already made the decisions. So I had to go
Yeah.
back and do the linear structure, the
The
one
thing that
everyone.
most adaptations do with the
Yes.
Odyssey, but with no good reason. You had a great reason, and
I
like
had a
that.
reason. Oh, thank you. I'm vindicated. No, it hurt my heart not to do it justice in that way, but you had to get to that point,
Yeah,
and it was
you
really
have to.
important.
And that's
'Cause you
why I
also
say
have
it like
to-
that, is it's more about you've created like the whole of Odysseus's Odyssey as compared to like Homer's Odyssey almost, because you did go more with like the bigger Odysseus, obviously working within Homer's, but
I like
sorry.
that. The bigger Odysseus.
The bigger.
Well, I liked this idea that there were all of these other intertwining stories, like from the epic cycle, which
Yeah.
not much of it doesn't exist anymore, save for the Homeric Iliad and Odyssey and all the bits in between, like Cypria and the Ethiopia and all the different stories. And I actually, after I'd started writing it, I sat down with several very large books of mythography, and I made spreadsheets.
I was literally just gonna ask, like, do you have like a web? Like, how are you keeping track of all of this information?
Well, I made spreadsheets first of all for literally every time Odysseus appears in a myth, so that I could build this in, which was great as well, because obviously there's not a lot of detail in the epic cycle, and the Cypria covers all like the start of the war and how Odysseus is involved in that and helping create the suitors for Helen's hand, how they create that particular oath that they swear, so they all have to go to the war, and then he feigns madness and all this stuff. I've referenced that throughout so that you hear bits of those stories in Odysseus's memory. But then it was also really helpful in sort of building a picture of how the start could be, what decisions you could make at the start. And I made it so that you as a reader taking part in this, you kind of have to decide what kind of Odysseus you are, because there's lots of conflicting stories. For example, when he and Diomedes go into Troy and they steal the Palladium, did you try and kill Diomedes for it? It doesn't sound like a very Odysseus thing to do, but did you? So I tried to put in like choice gates at the start, just to really get you thinking about the choices you will make. And then, do you stay with Agamemnon worshipping Athene? Do you go off with Menelaus? Which of those will actually work better? Will you argue with your people after this? And then where does the story go? So it's there is the ability to then not have the Odyssey and actually to get home safely. And it's fascinating because about 90% of the people who tell me they've read it went, "Oh, I got home straight away." I was like, that's lovely. That shows you're a wonderful, caring person.
Yeah. Unlike Odysseus.
It is far, far too easy on his men. He lets them mutiny. Oh no, they're all dead. It was just kind of lovely that they were going, "Oh wow, I got home. Oh, I'll have another go and see if I can make terrible decisions." And the nuance is that they realize they're not all terrible decisions, but a lot of them are decisions that are very, very selfish and all to do with getting that tasty kudos to give him Kleos, which is literally the story. The story is the Kleos, us singing of
the
him
quest
for all
for
time.
glory.
Fortune and glory. So yeah, that's where it started off. And then it ended up with, wait, what if he went with Menelaus? And I spent a whole summer researching like Bronze Age myths of Egypt and what it might look like there, and when does the Nile flood? Oh, it was delightful. I learned so much that I'd never had a chance to actually study. This is all a big excuse for me to do loads of research that I don't need to do for work. Trying to
that's the
shoehorn
fun
this
of
into
it.
lessons
Yeah.
to like year nines. You're only 12. Don't need to know this, but it's really cool. So here we go. Um, and that was so fun because it ended up like Menelaus loves him so much. It ended up being a little bit like a buddy comedy, but a buddy
I
comedy
can see
where you're
that.
also third wheeling with the ex-wife who's come back into the picture and hates you. Well, not hates you, but like really doesn't want you here right now because you're not meant to be there in their story.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of the sort of the realization of that. But then that also allowed me to get a bit of the Aeneid in there because we
Oh, you
touch
would.
on I did. If anyone
I
actually
know everyone
gets to
likes the
those
Romans.
sections, well, only because I wanted to like get Zacchaeus and Dido and that linked in there as their
Mm.
Menelaus and Helen are somehow around Egypt for 7 years.
They sure are.
I mean, it's
And they
not
have
the
minimal stories for those 7
yes.
years. They're
This is
like, this is, yeah. We got really rich. We got stuck on an island for a while. That's like the whole of the stories that come out of those 7 years.
yeah. I had to justify that.
Fair.
Yes.
I,
Well, yeah. Not Anna, but I had to justify that, and but that was fascinating trying to make that work, and also see what might have been also around at that time. And there's a little bit of Virgilian references in there too, and that it was fun, really, really fun. And then I thought, well, what if he completely messes up and loses everyone, but also doesn't get home in time? Because the whole second half of the Odyssey, as you know, is finely honed. He's getting home at exactly the right moment, exactly when the suitors are about to try murdering his son, exactly when Penelope is about to have to make her choice as to whether to hand over the kingdom to her son and go back to her father or marry one of these suitors. If he misses that window,
yeah.
what could happen? So there are several of endings that go that direction, including one which I did write essentially as a Euripidean tragedy in verse.
Ooh, I remember finding that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was pretty
No,
proud of that.
I think that I mean, that it's just all sounds so fun, and I can see myself wanting to do all of the same types of like really unhinged levels of research for this. Like, it reminds me, I'm working on right now, like I want to do some kind of book project, I mean, about women. Surprise. Who could have seen that coming? But like, it's like my version of Hesiod's catalog of women is kind of what I want to do. And so at this point, I'm the bigger part is like a book proposal, and then the smaller, just like the nerd in me, is creating a database of all women ever mentioned in myth. And so it's very much like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to, I look up one person, and then I've spent an hour like detailing the like etymology or something of a name that appears twice. And so yeah, it's just, I'll just say, like, it sounds so delightful, how you were able to go about it, and also just like so satisfying in that like nerd part of the brain. I mean, it reminds me of just the ways I was able to jam in little like facts and like learning, just knowledge tidbits into my book. It was a much more limited, but it's that same like excitement of like, oh, I learned this thing, like how can I frame it in such a way that I can teach it to you, the
Yeah.
reader.
That is, I mean, reading your book, the teacher in me and the mum in me as well was just going, oh, yeah, they would definitely ask about this. And here is a little sidebar. That's amazing. And all these details are here. That's something that's going to provoke discussion. Can't wait for that. I loved that there's so much additional detail. It's not just a retelling of the Odyssey for children. It is an entire guide as to how to appreciate it.
I mean, I hope that is how everyone sees it, because I mean, I'm so fucking proud of this book, but just generally, like, it was so fun to be able to teach all of this stuff. And there is so much, I think so often we come at these stories like, a story, and it's more of the examining it from like a literary perspective, and like there's nothing wrong with that, but obviously when it comes to the Homeric text, these are things that are so much bigger than literature. And I think that is the thing that we are constantly not, or like it's the thing that's most left out, I think, of just like the basic education of the ancient world, is just this reminder that like they weren't writing a story like we think of a story now, and that fundamentally changes like everything about the culture and how we learn it and everything. And so being able to like explain those elements, just the actual origins and the bigger, broader world itself, or like, I stuck to Bronze Age kind of facts as much as possible in the book, but we obviously did touch on other things. And so many times there was just like, it was an excuse for me to jam in like either a bit of extra nerdery or like, I also, you mentioned in yours that one of the things you wanted to get in was like the similes and the same similes. And, that was another thing that I got really excited about, especially because I had such a tight word count that like similes were unfortunately the first things to be cut. And there are a few that made it in because I was like, no, we have to keep like a handful of similes, like other words can go in favor, and like that is something that I'm very excited to have out into the world. And because it is so often the thing that just gets kind of left behind in favor of like Odysseus the hero did all of these like heroic things. And of course, going right back to the timeline and the like actual narrative structure, you changed yours for every good reason because that of how you're going about it. But I honestly think that's like the only good reason to change that structure when it comes to a retelling or reimagining, because I have a bunch of Odyssey kids books. I was picking them up anytime I saw anything like, and I have yet to find, I would say almost any kind of retelling of the Odyssey as compared to of like an actual translation, like almost all retelling, certainly everything I saw for kids, but even when you pick up like a book of just general Greek myths written by someone who tells this bit of the story, they will always rewrite the narrative to be linear. And like, I understand the basics of where that idea comes from, but I just think it takes so much away from the actual epic itself to just present it as this linear thing that just happened. And so that, for me, that was one of the big things that I got in for the kids too, is this idea that we don't have to trust everything Odysseus says.
Exactly, because you do immediately lose the sense of him as a narrator if you tell it as a linear story.
Exactly.
It actually happens.
Yeah. Yeah. But by making it linear, you are confirming everything Odysseus says when there is no reason in the narrative to do that. And it's more interesting to question what he says. And, I just think that fundamentally it is what makes the Odyssey what it is this narrative structure, and like the way that all of the fantastical things that are supposed to have happened happen because Odysseus says they happen, not because we actually see them happening in the epic itself. And like that's so much more interesting. And also like the fact that he basically starts off his story by saying like, hi, my name's Odysseus and I'm a liar, like that's basically what he says at the top. And yet all of these retellings are like, this is what happened, and you're like, it's not fun to just be like, this is what happened. Like, no, this man was potentially probably lying through his teeth, and like that's fine. But there is this, it's the same, it reminds me of the way the world did and continues, I think, to react to how Emily Wilson translates the first line, complicating muse of a complicated man. And this word complicated, right? And like people get, and by people I mean primarily men, get really triggered by this word of complicated. And it's so interesting to me that has been taken as like inherently a negative about Odysseus. Like people have said, that it's like somehow like an insult to the character of Odysseus to translate it as complicated. And I think that's so bizarre, and also like betrays, I think, like a complete, it betrays a lot of just how we are meant to understand men as a society, that like saying you're complicated is assumed to be an insult. But like, for what reason? Like, I'm complicated. I would not, I don't want to be
take
simple.
That as a compliment.
Yes,
you're a complicated person. You do a lot of different things.
Yeah, it's literal too. For I think it's so valid. And even like I've had conversations with Greek people who also really don't like that translation of compliment or complicated, but like I love it because I think it really does convey. Polytropos was never going to be a word that we can easily put into English, and people love to make an argument for like just saying many turns or whatever, but like complicated means that like
Yeah.
it's a much more succinct, smooth way of phrasing this man who does a lot of fucked up stuff. He does a lot of good stuff. Like, he is complicated. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like I just rambled that into the conversation, but it just blows my mind the way people take that as like a hit on Odysseus. And I guess I'm just waiting for the men who will inevitably find my retelling and take issue with it, because I did reuse complicated in it. Like, I think I said that he was brilliant and complicated, because I was like, you guys need to chill on thinking this is a bad thing. Like, it's not. But it's so, I don't know. I'm interested by people's reaction, and also I'm fucking proud of mine. That was a ramble.
No, well, for fun, but I think what's so important, as like you touched on, I'm a teacher, I'm a mum, I read a lot of kids' books.
I don't do any of those things, thankfully. But I'll be glad to hear from you.
Kids love weird books where odd stuff happens and they are absolutely fine with interesting narratives.
Yeah.
They might need a little bit of explanation. So it is really a shame when you get a kid's book and it's so simplified, even for a higher age group, and then with the linear narrative. And it's so easy to include that. So yeah, I'm so glad. I mean, I knew coming from you that you would never lose on the narrative, but also in the leaving bits out, because that's something that happens with adaptations as well, especially with film ones, but with book adaptations too. I've never seen a version of the Odyssey, especially written for children, where they don't take out stuff or directly change things.
Yes.
And it's never for the better.
No.
And I'm quite a purist. I do think it's kind of disrespectful and almost arrogant, to be honest, to change things in a way that is completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like, just one random case in point that is from neither of our books, obviously, but from the 1996-7 Odyssey miniseries, where they're trying to get out of Polyphemus's cave, and Odysseus, instead of like doing the whole clever nobody speech and getting getting Polyphemus drunk and then tying the men underneath the sheep and all of that, he said something like, "Oh, don't eat me, you'll eat all the magic in my head."
Oh my god.
And then he gets him drunk and they stab his eye out, and they're all running around like morons, and one of them is wearing a sheepskin, and they all run out while the guy playing the flute is squashed. And it's just like, what was wrong with the original story that is what you decided to do? Exactly. I mean, was it the budget? Could you just not get sheep big enough, or at least like I don't know, a hobby horse you could just cover? I don't know. But I mean, you spent all the budget on freaking golden Hermes flying around in his delightfully camp manner. But I don't know. It interests me. In that version, they even leave out the sirens, which is just such a move. So I know you and I both went, right, how much of this can we absolutely keep in? I didn't have a word limit.
Yeah.
I just
Your book's
kept
a little
going.
longer than mine. Yeah, it's a little.
My book gives me carpal tunnel. My book is half the weight my daughter was when she was born. That was a bit silly, to be honest, but I couldn't leave it alone. Amazingly, that is me having cut back on some of the sections.
No, but I think it's only a good thing, because it does. It shows the complexity, and your book was always meant to be like, well, you just kind of have all of the options there, and like that's it. Yeah, that's ideal.
You literally do. Like,
so you can't make it small, because the whole point is to have options. So it's like, well, it has to be long.
And as you're reading it, you might find, even though you made different choices from last time, it sounds a bit similar, but there's something different you can't put your finger in. And then you end up 3 or 4 sections later on a completely different adventure that you didn't realize that you were heading towards by making a decision earlier. So it's a bit more like a computer game in that kind of level of complexity, although without some of the details that you could have if it was electronic, like remembering your choices and having an inventory and stuff like that, which would be ever so fun.
That would be, but no, but I mean, I've played around a lot on yours over the years, especially because I am delighted to say to the listeners that I got access to this, like 4 years ago, I would say.
Oh, you were one of my
shared it with me at least.
readers.
Yeah, hell yeah. It was delightful. But I know there's been so many times where I have like been clicking around into all the different options, and I've thought that I've made Odysseus's like Homeric decisions in yours, and still ended up where I'm like, oh no, there's something where I clicked something slightly off from the Homeric because I've ended up in like a totally different place. And I just think that's such a fun, it's like a game in itself rather than just a straight, reimagining or retelling.
I kind of like the idea that some people might play it with a group. I say play it like literally like
no,
a game.
But it is very game-like.
Yeah, and I know some people have said they're reading it with their gaming group, like their D&D group, which I also do. And I played it with my class D&D group, which was so interesting because some of them had read the Odyssey and some of them hadn't because they were in my class. And this idea that also you could play it for how many bad decisions you can make or how quickly you can get him home. You can play it for how well do you know the Odyssey.
Yeah.
It's really hard at the start because unless you've read the Telemachy, you don't actually know what he did, when he left. You get the idea he left and sacked the Kokones, but like when did he leave and with who and so forth. So that's quite nice because even people who really know the Odyssey well might not make the right decision.
I think that there's details in that. This is definitely the ones that I got messed up on, even with my knowledge of the Odyssey. So yeah, I mean, you've tripped up even the best of us.
I have put on my website a downloadable spreadsheet, which does have all the correct sections, as it were, or like the ones that are the Odyssey. And as I'm making I decided it needed to be even more accessible. And I thought it'd be really fun for students who actually just need to know the main storyline, but also this aspect of making the choices helps them understand Odysseus better. And with your help, I've turned it into this audiobook podcast with a lovely soundscape, so you're immersed in it. And I had to go back to my own list of which sections are correct to go, oh man, which bits do I read? So in that, I focus on that main Odyssey storyline, but you still get a moment to hear what the options might be at this time. And then it gives you a second or two to think about it. And then the story continues and you can go, what? He chose what now? What are you doing? Don't shout at the Cyclops.
But he makes such good decisions.
Mostly.
That one is the funniest moment. Literally, he's about to escape completely unscathed from the Cyclops. And he's like, hey, tell your like dead eye that I just stabbed, that it was Odysseus. Like literally, he's like, I'm gonna just tell on myself.
And then everyone will notice me and I will get close. I actually do this bit in one of my lower school classes. Well, we don't get a lot of time to study the Odyssey, so we focus on book 9 and we do like good decisions, bad decisions. So I'm giving them a précis of book 9 and they have to write down whether this was a good decision or a bad decision. And then I get to the bit where he's escaped and they're like, oh, good decision. And then I tell them the bit where he shouts back and they're like, what? Okay, bad decision. And then they get thrown back to shore by the tidal wave. And then they set sail again. And then he shouts again. And they're like throwing pencils on the floor and yelling because why? What's he doing? I'm like, children, we did talk about kudos. It's so much fun. So I really hope people are doing the same thing and listening or reading and having that same moment where they realize that this isn't the decision he made and they're still alive. But will they be remembered? Was it worth it? What's it all about?
Well, Odysseus certainly succeeded there. Oh my God, mid-yawn. Well, I love talking about the Odyssey, if you can believe it. But it's so interesting to kind of imagine like how I've handled like such similar things things, because like there I wanted one of the big things I wanted to convey is this kind of, I mean, like, it's an inherent, like, not so much comedy, but this, like, it is meant to be funny to a degree. It is meant
Mm.
to be, like, tongue in cheek. You are meant to think, like, hey, Odysseus, that was a really terrible decision. Like, those things are meant by the Homeric tradition. I think it's pretty safe to say that like it was never meant to be this like uber serious, like, this moment where just this man is just his like godly search for home or whatever, right? Like you're meant to think like, hey dude, that was stupid, like you fucked up everything. And I think that is the thing that gets left on the table so often. And to be kind to retellings that leave kind of, that just make him into this perfect guy, there is like a kind reading that's just sort of, I don't even know what that kind of reading is. I guess that's just culturally what we imagine these days. But like more honest, more accurately, like when we retell that version, this like nonsense version where he's just this great guy who did these great things to get home, like we are inherently, perpetuating this idea of like Western dominance and supremacy, and just this idea that like everything that this man did is good because he did it. And I think that's so common with how we are meant to understand, particularly ancient and historical, like mythological and historical men, right? We are only meant to see the side that benefited us as a culture and not the side that like destroyed other people and their
Well,
culture.
if you want a nice version of Odysseus where he doesn't do anything wrong, you've got the Aeneid. And that is literally that is literally a tool of Roman supremacy and a piece
Yeah.
of propaganda, really talking about
Yeah.
how they are the best.
Yeah,
But then
because they
saying,
didn't make all the mistakes that
no.
Odysseus did.
But then, like, if you read Livy's history, where he's describing how Aeneas founded Rome, like they get to Italy and they just start stealing people's cattle because they don't have anything. That's
Yeah.
piracy. So, and you get a much more level storytelling. I mean, Livy's just so cross about having to reference myths in the first place. It's hilarious. But I very much maintain that, Aeneas is that character.
Yeah.
It's not Odysseus. I mean, Aeneas never does anything wrong, ever. And even when he does, it's not his fault. And we're all meant to sympathize with him because he gets blanked by Dido in the underworld. But that's it. Like, you can't be complicated and then just be perfect and bleached out.
Yeah, like the many turns, like
Yeah.
that's what this is. And no, using Aeneas as that example is so perfect because it is exactly the difference of one was written as like, whether intentionally propagandic or not, it was intentionally written by one person during this very specific time
Mhm.
period, whereas we don't have any of that when it comes to Homer. And so like that's the thing that gets forgotten most of all, is like Homer was not about writing like a good guy bad guy
Yeah.
story about good versus evil, whatever. Like that's not what this was about, and that's okay.
I mean,
We don't need to pretend like it was.
you really see that in the Iliad as well, where it's not like
Yeah.
either side is bad. They're just both
No.
there
And the
living in
Trojans
this
are
scenario.
almost always more sympathetic than the Greeks, despite the story being primarily about the Greeks. And like that too, yeah, is so important. And that's what makes them so interesting. And like the Odyssey, yeah, is fun because Odysseus is like a fucking loser who makes really terrible decisions a lot of the time. And like that doesn't, I don't know, it's so interesting to navigate in this realm where we also like hear from the public, because broadly the public is just so weird about this stuff. I'm honestly kind of excited because I'm so comfortable now in my Odyssean knowledge, my
Yeah.
everything in that realm. Like
You've done the homework. You
I'm
know it.
very confident in what I have written and like the value of it. And but also I know that it's going to piss some people off, and I'm just so ready for them to be mad. That's so fine. But no, like I think yeah, it's so easy to ignore the bad stuff. That was obviously a big thing that I wanted to get into the kids book, is like all of the bad. I think, we're talking about how neither of us wanted to cut anything, surely. And I think I want to think like a little closer and just make, but the only the only moment that I knowingly cut out of my Odyssey, and I do like saying this because I think it really impacts the point, that the only moment that I knowingly cut out, the only actual like plot point thing that I cut out, is when there's the story within the story about Aphrodite and Ares getting caught fucking under a net. And that is a real travesty that I didn't get to include that. But I also think it says a lot that is the only thing I cut out, and it's because it's a completely unrelated story that involves a lot of sex, and I was not going to try to do that when I could cover everything in the Odyssey that matters.
Yeah. I suppose we should put that in context. That's the song Demodocus the Bard is singing in the Phaeacian.
Thank you. I legitimately couldn't remember where it appears because I've cut it out, and I've now read my version through edits and the audiobook so many times that I'm like, I actually don't know where it was. I just know it's not in mine. So thank you.
Again, just to point out that kids can handle stuff like this. That's
For sure.
That's a story in my Latin class textbook.
Oh my god, that's delightful.
12-year-olds. I mean, it's very heavily euphemistic. Yeah. They were very happy in the bedroom. But it's in there.
Well, and I could have, that was really, for me, it was a word count thing more than, because I also, it was interesting generally on the kids' side. There was a couple moments at the beginning where it was like, okay, like, there are rules about particularly like regionality. Like I was told a lot of things and have promptly forgotten, but like each country can also have different rules about like what kids are and are not allowed to have. Like it's quite huge, especially for DK, because they are like, I think, the most worldwide kids book publisher.
Absolutely. And they have a real educational bent to their work.
Exactly. And so, they had some specific kind of rules. At the beginning, it was like, my editor was like, I got to go double check that, we can mention wine. And I was like, newsflash. I was like, that's gonna be a deal breaker. I was like, the answer cannot be no. Like, you can't. Sorry. Like, that's literally all they drink. I actually can't write a book about Greek myth without like, it was like when I put Wine Dark Sea, and I was like, oh god, no. But thankfully, obviously, it was just like her needing to double check. Like, clearly it was fine. Wow. But there was this brief moment where I was like, what do you want me to do if I can't mention wine? But no, and there were, it's interesting just generally like those things. And I learned a lot about like actual like the printing process, and like with full color books, in order to be printed with any kind of reasonable price point, they're usually printed in China. Which, like, great, they have the facilities to do it. But what that means, but they have some rules about maps. And so like the map there was like potentially issues around that, but we ended up sticking with, we made it the most mythological map in order to sort of avoid any kind of sticky. But my editor was like, she was great because she just wanted to share this stuff with me. So she was like telling me all this like kind of tea about what you can and can't include, and all of these like nonsense, world leader bullshit. Like,
it's
like
who's got to have the biggest country, and so country can't be bigger. I've heard that somewhere.
Is it this is me having a embarrassing lack of knowledge. Is it Taiwan? It's that like China, whatever the land is that China says is theirs and the people say it's not. I believe it. It's Taiwan. And basically like there are places like that. Like there are places where like China doesn't like acknowledge it. So you can't have them printed on a map, like they won't, or something like that.
Wow.
And then there was also like, I was ready for a fight because I had to have the Levant on my map, and I was like, you're not putting the word Israel on there. Like it is mythological, and generally like we only have, but at the same time I was also like, I'm putting Tyr on this map. Like there are places where it's relevant to the map, and also for me that's my little like bit of aggression. Like, Israel, you want to bomb the fuck out of this like Bronze Age city? Well, I'm gonna put it on my map anyway. But there was these moments. It's just interesting. I love the logistics and like learning all this weird stuff, and it's just, and there was definitely some stuff about the States and like weird laws down there. I wish I remembered them more specifically, because like obviously,
oh, it's fascinating.
Just stuff you never think about, right? But it's just like what the country will or will not print.
So it's the kind of thing you wouldn't know unless it suddenly came up and becomes
exactly
a problem.
Well, and even just the idea, like I know that like full color books tend to be printed in China and all the things that comes along with that because of my like, I went to publishing school shit. But like the map thing was like a whole other level of like, oh, okay, right, no, but China will also be weird about what maps, and like I'm sure the States is similar, they're just with different portions of the map. And yeah, it's interesting. And also like global politics are dumb. Probably shouldn't call them dumb, but the way that
Well,
these world leaders are behaving, I don't
I don't
know.
know. I think it's justified.
It's
No, I love that we both got maps into our books. I
hell
had,
yeah.
as an illustrator, I was like, right, well, this is a great chance to do some very interesting pictures, not stick figures for once, because it's not a comics. And I had such fun researching and looking at different versions of the map of the world, the big flat disc of the world, and
Yeah.
where different people at different times, mostly Victorians, it seems, were obsessed with trying to work out what the map might have looked like. They weren't trying to map it necessarily onto modern day landforms, though, which is, I think that's really difficult trying to do that. I mean, obviously, those landforms were there, but they didn't necessarily know they were there.
That's
But
the
it's just
thing.
so interesting having a
Yeah.
place where you can actually go to the underworld as well. It's just like
Yeah.
to the west.
Well, and I love the underworld one because the Homeric entrance to the underworld is like a very different place from later, more archaic and classical
Mm,
entrances to the underworld, because there's a bunch, right?
mm.
And like with my map, but yeah, I went with this similarly. Like I would use yours as a decent starting off point too, as like melded with a bunch of others, but yours was heavier in mine. But I really don't like the mapping it out onto the real world
Mm.
for a couple different reasons. Like I respect it and I understand why people want to generally, but like I feel like it's so unnecessary because this is so explicitly mythical, you know?
Especially as so many parts of it are in supernatural lands.
Exactly. And I also think you open a can of worms by trying to place certain creature type people or like violent certain type people. Like you call it's not okay to then just be like, I think this was in Africa, because generally that's the way the winds might have pushed if this were at all real, right? Like the lotus eaters are
Mm.
often placed in Africa, or like the Cyclops is Sicily, and you're like, which that one always drives me nuts generally, because Charybdis and Scylla are also always put in the strait, Italy and Sicily. Why can't I think of what the strait is called? Messina, the Messina Strait.
Well done.
Thank you. But like they're always put there. But then, like, why would the Cyclops be the same island that separates Scylla and Charybdis? Like, it actually doesn't make any sense. So, like, why do we have to do that?
Yeah.
Anyway, very long way of saying mine is very mythical, and so I don't have. I even tried to make it. Greece is vaguely Greek shaped, but that's about it. And otherwise, it's much more of like this overall idea of where these places would be in this like wider ocean. Because yeah, it's like I don't know. I think it's weird, and also they would not have been sailing the entirety of the Med back then. Like
No, of course.
it was not
Island
ever
hopping.
imagined to be in these explicitly real places, aside from in my map actually, or in my overall like breakdown at the beginning. We have a lot of like informative stuff at the beginning of the book, and I did also make a point of pointing out which places are real and which are mythical, which I also think is important, and like
Mm.
made a point of making sure that kids knew the modern places for everything, and I think that's so important. So often we use this term Mesopotamia and we never use the word Iraq alongside it, and you're
Yeah.
like, that's crazy. And also it contributes to like the genocidal nature of the West. um and yeah, naturally I'm going to talk about a kid's book and also use the word genocide because I am me. And this is actually like is a little circle for my brain, because I think that I thought of saying this earlier, but I think it's actually quite beneficial to have somebody like me write a kid's book in
Mm.
this type, because I think because I came at it not for kids, that it almost got, you were saying the kids can handle the Aphrodite and Aries stuff, right? And all of these things, like kids can handle stuff, and there's this mentality that we have to sugarcoat it for them. And because I don't have that mentality, because I don't like to be around children broadly, you know any kind of like child friendly nature of my book is done by the editors, but mine otherwise I was just like wanting to tell the simple story of the Odyssey. Like it's not a kid friendly Odyssey, it's just a shortened version that also happens to be kid friendly and beautifully illustrated. But like that's not, my intention was just to tell the Odyssey.
Yeah. I
rather
think
than to kids.
the beauty of a book like that is that it could be marketed for kids, but to be honest, anyone's going to get joy out of that. It's beautiful to look at. It's incredibly informative. It tells a story in a really good way, which doesn't, and also it doesn't take away from the potential to read the Odyssey itself, which is also something I didn't want to do. I'm not replacing the Odyssey.
God, no. We wouldn't dare.
No, I mean, the Odyssey exists. So like, that's an amazing thing, and I this is why I think I used to get so upset when people would make versions of it and it's like, this isn't as good. What were you thinking? I mellowed a bit now. But this idea that every piece of classical reception, every retelling is kind of a mirror on the world of who it's being retold to and why. I think when people take ownership of a text like that, they just have to be respectful to it, and it's a really big responsibility, because it's not something you want to create misunderstandings about and suggest it has a different purpose than what it has. Even if you are doing a retelling, you can take aspects of it and retell those, but it just, the idea of changing its inherent meaning is abhorrent to me. It makes me very upset.
There is something I'm thinking of that I'm not going to say into this microphone because people would get really mad at me. So I'll just think it. But I think there's a pretty good example of that happening, and it's pretty popular. But that's fine. That actually is still the perfect way to loop back around, because I think we should talk a little bit about this trailer.
Oh, go on then.
Like there is so much to be said for adaptations and how, historicity doesn't, being 100% historically accurate is not necessarily like the best way to go about these things. Like it is a movie, it's always going to be an interpretation. Of course, Hollywood this, Hollywood that, blah blah blah. I am just really disappointed in the way that they have somehow managed to leech all color out of Greece, even though they filmed it in Greece. And yet I watch those trailers and I think, I have never seen such a colorless Greece in my life. And if you can believe it, I've been there a handful of times. And it just, it's such a bummer, like among so many other things. But just overall, like, I don't want to be that person who's just like, oh, it's not accurate, blah, blah, blah. But like, and that's not the point. Like the point is that they have removed the like some quintessential aspects of the ancient world that I just think do a real disservice. And it's just the trailer, I know, and I'm just going to become like the person who's constantly bitching about this movie, and I'm comfortable with that.
I've decided to try and be as constructive as I can when I talk about it, because you've
taken the other direction.
Well, not so much the other direction. I'm not like, I love it.
No.
I have been waiting. I've been teaching for 20 years. I have been waiting for a good Odyssey film. The miniseries is kind of the closest, I think. I mean, there are other films from other countries that are really good too, but they're maybe not as accessible in the classroom for children, or they're older, or they're just too long, like the miniseries is, which also leaves out loads of stuff and yet looks kind of right in places. And then the return happened, and like, well, that wasn't the film I wanted. So I know I'm kind of desperate at this point. So I am a rosy-eyed girl right now. I mean, what I'm glad about is that we got to be disappointed really early with how it looked. Because now I'm just happy that the trailer had bits in it that are in the Odyssey, because all we'd seen so far was the Iliad. I mean, the horse is talked about at moments in the Odyssey, so it was
not in the Iliad.
Indeed, right? It's actually not in the Iliad, but like it's more linked to. We see lots of there were lots and lots of scenes being linked of clearly armies fighting at Troy
war,
with the Iliad, which is the massive irony that those are in bits of the epic cycle that don't exist anymore.
I know, every time that's shown, it's delightful.
They did not survive.
No, everyone loves to focus on these moments that actually don't exist in the ancient record.
But it's, I mean, and it made it very clear straight away that yes, this is a film that is going to be, I suppose you could almost say, they're trying to make it accessible to as many people as possible who haven't been aware of the Odyssey and the Iliad, who haven't seen it. That's the positive view on it. Yeah. However, they've gone with the lowest common denominator of visuals in order to make that happen. And when we are talking about the color, like it's fascinating that it doesn't seem to be doing anything historical, and yet it's using that sepia tone kind of color palette, which says history. And I've had so many people point out to me in the last few days that the director is colorblind, and that's why he uses that tonal palette. That director hasn't.
That's not a good excuse, actually.
No. Like, what? Why?
A lot of men are colorblind. That doesn't mean they have to take the color away from the rest of us.
It just smacks of being a bit of an excuse. Like, I'm sure. I mean, he's a very thorough director from all the films I've seen, and he's gone to great pains. They made a new camera to be able to film in IMAX. Like, they invented a camera. Like, this is a guy with attention to detail. That's not something that I think he would let slip by.
No.
I would like
very
to ask
intentional.
him.
I mean, I'll be like, I know that I'm such a broken record with this, and I'm gonna have to find other things to complain about, but like, it just, all of it screams to me of a Western propaganda. Like, it really. And can I just point out it's like it's not like tinfoil hatty, but like it's also not, but like it's just quite the turn of events to me that the movie Troy came out in the first year of the Iraq War, and now this is happening in this year. And it just, obviously it is coincidental because this has been in production, but like it just feels like this cyclical thing that I can't unsee, the way that like we are pushing this Western propaganda, and even more pro-American than Troy. Even, at least in Troy, they pretended to have like some kind of accent that wasn't explicitly American, but now they've even got the Brits doing American accents in this Odyssey, which is a wild choice to me. But also just like it feels, it just screams of propaganda, unfortunately, in this way. It's this epic, I mean, we did see these moments of the actual plot in this trailer, but one, I will say, as we were talking earlier about narrative structure, nothing in this trailer suggests that they are keeping the narrative structure of the Odyssey.
I actually know that they are, because that was in an interview that I then watched because I needed to know, and that they are using the narrative structure.
Thank God.
Good.
That
was my minimum request.
Absolutely.
Basically.
Good.
And thank you. I have got that. I mean, it would also be nice to see some stuff that looked Greek. Just a little Greek. Just a touch. I will say that Ithaca does look very Minoan in places. I mean, complete lack of frescoes. There's no color in it, but like, you know how Knossos looks in the reconstructions of things, but like if you took away all the frescoes that have been repainted, that's what Ithaca looks like.
See, I thought Ithaca just looked like they'd kind of taken the Acropolis and just sort of digitally messed with it.
Well, also it's enormous. Ithaca's not. Odysseus is not a king of a massive. It's bigger than Mycenae. That's not likely.
People love to make Ithaca out into like this big thing because of Odysseus, and you're like, that's again not the point. Ithaca's a backwater goat town. Honestly. But no, I have to say, in terms of like more complimentary things, I actually kind of love that Robert Pattinson is playing Antinous. I enjoy that a little bit.
From what I've seen, I think that's a really good bit of characterization. I'm
Yeah.
wondering if there will be any other suitors of name, because of course there's Eurymachus, not Eurymachus.
Yeah. I know.
Eurymachus.
Those two names interchangeable.
Far speaker, far warfare. Oh no,
Far
wide.
warrer.
Yuri is wide.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
wide speaker. Wide warfare.
Far warrer is Telemachus instead.
Yeah. And I think, I'm sure there'll be, you do have to make changes from a text when you turn it into a film, especially a film that would never be long enough to include everything.
No,
it would take
that.
when they did the reading at the BM in the Almeida Theatre many years ago, and they read the entire Odyssey Iliad. In fact, they did first. That took about 14 hours.
I was going to say it's usually, I mean, as somebody who has read the entirety into a microphone once and now half of again, it's usually like a good 15 hours.
And as someone who's making a podcast of it and is only halfway through, yes. But it's what they cut will be really, really interesting, and which characters they cut, or which characters they squish down into maybe being one character. Like, I've seen people say, "Oh, we haven't seen Calypso, so maybe there's no Calypso in the film. Maybe it's Circe is Calypso."
Charlize Theron is Calypso.
Oh no, sorry, Circe, not Calypso.
Sorry, my God! Imagine if they didn't have Circe. That would be.
But that is wild speculation. If you look on IMDb, the cast lists don't have any names by them for the majority. I was really excited because I thought there was an old man character who's so wildly made to look old. I was so convinced that was going to be Odysseus in disguise. I thought, that's totally Matt Damon, and he's putting on a slightly different voice. And there is
It's just John Leguizamo. What?
That's just what he sounds like.
He looks like he's wearing old man makeup, but I also think he's just like, they must have him in some. But like, I can't believe that's John Leguizamo playing Eumaeus. That's wacky. That's wacky.
I know. I'm so annoyed because I thought that would be really. I thought they really have made him look unlike himself. No, idiot. I went through a lot.
Do you like that Telemachus called him Dad? Do you like that? How do we like Dad?
Did
I ever tell you that I wanted to? This is like a little peek behind the curtain of what I was not allowed / I didn't actually ask because I didn't actually want it in there. But my first draft of the line that Odysseus speaks when he like finally reveals himself, he's naked, he jumps on the table, he's about to shoot a guy through the neck. Emily Wilson has it saying like, playtime is over is her line. And like, it's quite like, I looked at all the other translators and, people are having fun with this line. So I was like, okay, I can have like fun with this. And what I really wanted to say was "Daddy's home," because I thought that would have been hilarious. And yeah, because
Daddy
is home. Like, it just would have been.
Playtime finishes when Daddy comes home.
Yeah.
Yes.
But again, I actually did not want that in the book necessarily. So I think I forget what I wrote, but it was fun anyway. But it's just an interesting. Yeah, this idea, like the dad of it all, I guess, is what I'm getting back to, because I didn't want to put daddies in there because that sounded too colloquial and ugh.
I mean, when there are two bits where dad or daddy are used. I think one is when
how is there two in one trailer? There should not be. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. I know there's one because I heard Telemachus say dad.
I might be misremembering it now, but there's a bit where Telemachus is being very much talked down to and taunted by an Antinous, played by Robert Pattinson, and he is made to. It's like the kind of the equivalent of when I think he's called in the original text like a sniveling cur, like a puppy, right? So you could argue that's kind of within tolerance if you were translating it in a more modern thing. But I've seen so many people say the word dad just shook them out of the whole thing.
I was watching it with a friend.
Modern.
Yeah, I was watching it with a friend last night actually, who has absolutely no connection to Greek myth except knowing me. And the second that word came out, he looks at me and he was like, "Dad?" Like, I was like, yeah, okay. So we do even like the most normal of normal regular people. That sounded absurd. And they've just got Tom Holland doing an American accent to say dad. And it's just the combination of things.
Well, see,
I'm not
I'm
confident.
convinced that what we're getting is, instead of a historical story, instead of a mythological story, we're getting a fantasy. We're getting an interpretation
Yeah.
where it's like a dream and all like the things that
I mean, it's very Christopher
you
Nolan.
might, well, I mean, he's good at twisty plots, right?
Mm.
But here it's like, well, what if you told the story of the Odyssey to an audience who have 90% no knowledge about the ancient Greek world? What are they going to envisage in their mind's eye? What are they going to imagine these people look like? What are they wearing? Based on
I
just
think you're
things they
giving him
might
way
have
too much
seen.
credit.
I know,
You're
I'm
giving
trying.
him
I am
way
trying.
too much credit because
I
understand where you're
just
coming
want it
from,
to be
but then I'm also like,
good.
that's not an excuse. Can we talk about the Lystragonians?
The
They just look like medieval suits of armor,
yeah,
just
they
the walking
do.
medieval suits of armor. What are we doing? What are we
I mean,
doing?
I have this delightfully, I don't know, delightfully weird children's book that I found, the Geraldine McCorian retelling of the Odyssey, which I think was from the 90s. And in one of the pictures, the Lystragonians, it's like Gulliver's Travels. Odysseus like sitting in this girl's hand.
Yeah,
And that's like,
they're supposed to be
they're
giant.
not supposed to be that big, I think. Although
no,
again,
yeah,
I
not
mean,
like that.
A
Like,
woman
but,
of mountainous size sitting on a throne, I didn't take to mean she literally was the size of a mountain, because
No,
you'd see her from a distance.
I picture more like Polyphemus size. Like, I think they should be
Yeah.
equivalent. They're just generally giant.
I mean, that didn't take a lot to be a giant, I think, in the ancient world. I mean, I remember
Yeah,
reading that the
exactly.
average height was probably about 5'5". So
Yeah.
I like
nice.
thinking of
Me.
like, yay, you average person. You, I'm 5'9", which is unusual for me.
Ooh,
But
you're fancy.
we have, I don't know if you still have Gladiators, because I think it came on in the States originally, but we have the series Gladiators, where there's like amazing athletes and they all dress up in spandex with a different identity, and then regular people who were also very fit but still like not gladiators come up and play games against them. And it is basically, I think, the closest that we're going to get to watching gladiator bouts, except everyone's also really nice to each other. But there are like the personalities, and there's the bad guy and the good guy. But when you look at the gladiators, there were these amazing specimens of physicality, and they're all like about 1.5 feet taller than the regular people who go up about them, who are also like
gives it away.
like the people who go up against them, they work out a lot, but they still look like they're made of matchsticks when you compare them to the gladiators. So I'm thinking Lystragonians are gladiators times 5.
Yeah.
You want to be able to like take a spear, run it through about 5 people like they're on a spit, and then start eating them straight away. That's what I want. But so this idea that they just immediately start killing them, I guess it boils it down to the whole like, well, they don't give hospitality, but I don't know. There's also, I noticed in that bit, there's snow whistling past, and I suppose it does come quite close in the story to when they go to the underworld, and where the underworld is meant to be near the edge of the world, and
it's like a little north. It's like Hyperborea-ish, but like
so, and if a person was a shepherd there, they could do 2 lines of work, because they could start in the morning and the evening, because the night is so short. That's the really interesting description that's given as a simile to try and get the people who are shepherds to understand how the night and day is different here. So I thought, like, there's little moments where I go, oh, okay, you're listening.
But why is it a sentient medieval suit of armor?
Yeah, that, I don't know. I'm fascinated, but I the thing is, it shouldn't be a fantasy, because myth is important.
Exactly,
and fantasy is made up.
Yeah.
And myth tells us things about cultures, like we were saying at the start. It's culturally significant. These are heroes. These people were actually worshipped, and some of them still are, as being archetypes, and specifically ancient Greek archetypes, and these amazing characters. And the reason why, out of all the epic cycle, the Odyssey and the Iliad survive is, in my humble opinion, is because they have a character. They are built around one specific character. The others, there's loads of stuff happening, and it's just story. Then this happens, then this happens. But those stories are told about individuals. One is Odysseus and one is Achilles. They are fascinating characters because they are flawed characters who deal with their humanity. But they also do it in a way which is incredibly important in terms of their culture of the time. Like, at the start of my book, when you're making your decisions, I have a list. Think about how Odysseus would have thought. You are looking forward to getting kudos, which will lead to kleos, everlasting glory. You want to have either, as in you want to not do shameful things. You want to be worried about shame. You want to do the right thing, but you will also practice hospitality. There are these rules that you must partake in. And you do these things by the rules of the gods. And you know what I'm going to say next, right? Hashtag defy the gods. Now, I'm hoping this is like, defy the gods and see what happens, man, because Odysseus is coming for you. Because that's what happens in the Odyssey. All the people who die horribly in the Odyssey have not given Xenia, or even worse, they've broken that rule. It is the rule of Zeus. You give hospitality. You don't eat your guests. You don't hit on their wife. You don't plot to murder their son and take over their kingdom, right? You don't do that. You also just don't eat all their food and refuse to leave. Like, those are all the things that Polyphemus does, that the suitors do.
I maintain that Polyphemus does not do that. But he doesn't do that either. Odysseus does that to him.
No, he would have given them cheese had he been a civilized person.
If they had stayed and asked, but instead they just ate all of his food. So no.
It's his fault for not being there to receive guests.
It is not. No.
He didn't even leave the fire going.
Yeah.
We are never going to agree on this.
No, I know. But you know what? It's because for me, all I see, because after rereading it enough times, all I see is the colonial implications in that whole section. And the way that, because the reason why Polyphemus doesn't act exactly right is because he is not meant to be like of the same culture, and Odysseus is making like a really nasty judgment about his culture.
Oh my gosh, yes, of course.
Yeah,
but that is the same judgment, otherness. We are like, even Athenians would say that about the Spartans. Yeah. We are us. Everyone else is a barbarian. But can I just point out that Odysseus' men say, "Oh look, cheese, sheep. Shall we steal them?" And Odysseus says, "No."
He says, "No, we should stay and wait to see if he gives us more gifts."
Yes, I'm not saying that he was doing it. He's a total hound when it comes to kudos. He's like got a taste for it now. He's going to get it anywhere he was. But
like, I don't think Polyphemus did nothing wrong. I just don't think that. I think that they're equally at fault.
I'm going to make you a t-shirt.
Yeah, Polyphemus was wronged.
Did not do nothing wrong. No,
he was wronged by Odysseus, but he did wrong as a result of being wronged.
He just doesn't follow Xenia. It's not his world. He cares nothing for the gods, even though his dad is Poseidon. He doesn't live by those rules.
Yeah, and Odysseus punished him for not living by the same cultural rules, and that's why I don't like Odysseus.
I mean, he did bring a gift, and it's not like Polyphemus didn't immediately eat his men. So, do you know what I am interested in, though? Oh, see, now I think we can put our differences aside and see what the film does with this, because I love.
Actually, though, why does and this is maybe too much, but I haven't rewatched it again, but based on what I was seeing last night, and granted, I was a couple cocktails in and I was already annoyed at this trailer, but Polyphemus's eye looked to me more like a vagina than an eye.
Okay. I was watching on my phone and it was really small and it's very dark, and I'm saying I a lot, which is ironic. I did not make that leap. I as a teacher, I'm constantly scanning images to check, do they look rude? Because they often do. You just have to be careful about that. But I didn't get that. I mean, I think what I do. It's
not my goal to wrap things up by saying that Polyphemus' eye looks like a vagina in the new movie, but here we are anyway. So
I don't know, but I'm worried about this moment where I see them all running away from Polyphemus, not under sheep. No. And the bit at the very end of the trailer, which is hilarious, but like, does it have a place there? I think he's asleep. Spoiler, he was not asleep. Bam, bam, bam. Like, have they changed the story? Is that him reacting to them poking him in the eye while he is asleep? Or is that a comedy moment where I think he's asleep and then he's looking at you? I think, like you said, there are moments of comedy in the Odyssey. There are moments of reality, and there's also moments of like horrible heartbreak and then violence. It's got everything.
It
Again, why
does,
it's
yeah.
so popular. So it's nice to see that there will be some moments of levity. But like, where are they? Where? That's the important thing. Where are they?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, who I feel like I learned something last night about who's playing. Who was playing Menelaus now?
I can see his
Anyway.
face. Do you want me to look it up?
I mean, I feel like I just overall the casting. I mean, I'll never get over them not casting a single Greek person. That's just heartbreaking. It's mean, and like they filmed in Greece, they got Greek tax breaks. They didn't hire a single Greek person. They didn't hire a single Mediterranean person that I've seen, but definitely not even a Greek. Like, what are we doing?
The guy playing Menelaus, sorry,
No.
is
Thank you for looking it up.
John Bernthal, who I
Oh
can't think of what he's
yeah,
been in.
yeah. And he was in like I didn't watch it, but The Walking Dead, I think is what
Oh,
he
was
was like
he?
most. Wait, maybe not. Yes. Anyway, he was in the Daredevil Marvel show,
Right.
and I remember him in that. Interesting. Yeah. No, that kind of works. I could see. that. I think the one oh yeah, Elliot Page is playing somebody in the underworld, and
Do you know, I heard they might be playing Achilles.
that's what I heard too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very interesting.
I would be down with Achilles, or what did I think of last night? I mean, I could see them being Patroclus, but Patroclus notably does not speak, so
No.
hopefully not. No, I definitely like. I think that was the one moment where I was like, I'm okay with that casting. I'm actually happy with that casting.
I think in what he says in the trailer, I say, "Who is looking after your wife and child?" I think that sounds like in hindsight. I
Yeah.
was watching on a really tiny screen, and I thought because I'd seen images of the Nakia underworldy bit before that looked like everyone was a skeleton, and I thought, well, how are you meant to
Mm.
recognize them if they're a skeleton? So I immediately assumed it can't be that. And we've seen bits of that before. So I thought, are these the sirens? Have they interpreted them a bit more like the
Oh.
Grey Eye, for example?
Ooh.
Because
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was Elliot Page. I thought it was Frances McDormand, mostly
Oh.
because the voice sounded quite like her voice of God in Good Omens. I don't know.
Oh my god,
It
that's
was
so
very
funny.
early in the morning. And then I
Yeah.
realized later, I'm like, hang on a minute, the other person that's seen is literally wearing a blindfold over their eyes. That's clearly
Yeah, that's Tiresias.
Tiresias. Duh.
Yeah.
And they're covered in
I do
mud.
think
So
visually the visual of Tiresias was great. I will say that.
do you see? I mean, that's a
Yeah.
great line for a man whose eyes are covered, which
Yeah.
is great. Yeah, I'm going to make a prediction that they will not include the catalogue of great women from book 11 in the
Oh.
Nakia.
Oh, but I would be so utterly shocked. I would be simply taken aback if the white American men making this movie thought that the women in the underworld were unnecessary. Oh, I've never heard of a man retelling the Odyssey who's done that before, and I definitely didn't
Dude, I
throw a
hope
bit
no
of
one
shade earlier.
I hope no one is driving listening to this because I think they just veer off the road.
Ugh, they should be used to me by now.
I
God.
spent so long researching, I say researching, looking up again and trying to flesh out those stories so I could have every single one with even more context. The only thing I
Hell
didn't
yeah.
do was put it in their own words and have them talking, which
Mm.
I mean, it's not like that in the Odyssey, so I kind of stuck to that. I think it could have been very interesting if I had done that, and I kind of
Yeah.
maybe I should have gone back and rewritten it. But
Because it's like, they're not just random women, but everybody loves to
no,
think that they're just random women, and then we just ignore them because they're just random chicks. I feel very strongly about this one. Very strong. No, I mean, honestly, I think this was like a very fun way to wrap up this episode because this trailer, well, here we are. I mean, it's going to come out. Happy birthday to me. And yeah, it's going to be interesting at the very least. I got a book deal out of it. So everybody pre-order my Odyssey so that I can make money off of Christopher Nolan's mistakes.
And I got some free publicity because it came out
Heck
exactly at the moment I published mine.
Heck
Well,
yeah.
the
We're all
bump
just
did.
gonna take advantage of this Odyssey fame.
And use it to teach people about the actual Odyssey so they can better appreciate the film in the way it is intended, and then maybe go and read one of the fabulous translations of the Odyssey that are available.
Perhaps
And
a children's book, or the You Are Odysseus.
and indeed a version where you can truly immerse yourself in the Odysseus and imagine all the color that yours will be physically full of, and mine is
Damn right.
on the cover.
I mean, I think at this point, based on that trailer, I can also say that I have gotten in more Bronze Age frescoes into my children's retelling of the Odyssey than Christopher Nolan.
It's an impressive boast, honestly. It truly is.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I also think even the armor, which is delightfully funny because I gave the illustrator very few guidelines on armor other than like they have to be wearing armor in order for them to be wearing bracers. That's about it. And I still think that it's going to be far more accurate than whatever bizarre hyper modern steampunk armor that Christopher Nolan has gone with. And I was trying to wrap it up succinctly instead of just bitching more about Christopher Nolan, but here we are. I'm a woman with opinions. This has been so much fun.
Honestly, I can't think of a better thing to do than a Thursday night.
Me neither. Well, do you want to, I mean, obviously the listeners better realize by now that You Are Odysseus, the podcast audiobook version, is available wherever you get your podcasts as part of the Memory Collective podcast network.
I'm very proud to be so.
Heck yeah. But is there anything else you want to share with listeners? Where can they find your book? What do you want to boast about?
Oh, wow. Okay. No, you can find my book. You can find it by looking up the title. You can find it on most book retailers. You can also order it directly from my website, ljenkinsonbrand.co.uk. And you can find, as I say, the podcast pretty much anywhere, which is fantastic. Or again, at the same website. Things I want to brag about. I once, this is actually nothing to do with it, but it kind of fits, right?
Oh, I'm excited.
I once made a list of every single person who was in the Iliad, including all of their epithets and how they die, and then forgot. And then about 3 years later, I was like, I wonder if anyone has made a list of all the people in the Iliad. And, I have.
Oh, somebody did. It was me.
It was me. And then I did exactly the same thing with my spreadsheet of Odysseus in Myths. And I was like, wait, have I included every possible? I should make a spreadsheet of this. Oh, no, I did that 3 years ago. I haven't used it for the last year. What was I thinking? So, yeah, I don't know why I'm bragging about that.
No, I love this. I find it so relatable. The way I've done like the same work 4 times because I've like forgotten that I've done it before. Yeah. No, I love that.
But no, on a serious note, you can find loads and loads of comics that explain the Odyssey as close to the narrative as possible, and also explain the use of similes and other narrative techniques at greekmythcomics.com. I make them all for my classes. They've gotten through many, many exams. And there's loads of other comics there completely for free that you can download and stick in your lessons if you're a teacher, or just use to revise from. I've even got some Odyssey guides there to the structure and the key themes that you can just get, or you can pay pocket money prices for like a really nicely printable version. But it's all there at greekmythcomics.com for you to have a look at and hopefully learn something that will help you appreciate all these amazing pieces of literature from the ancient world that we're so inspired by.
Hell yeah. You know, you have so many good resources on that site, so I'm very glad that you mentioned it. And yeah, we will just both single-handedly teach you all, well, not you all listen to me, so you probably know, but the rest of the world, you and I will single-handedly teach them what the Odyssey really is. This is me trying to, I'd love to be a more positive person, but here we are. No, this was so much fucking fun. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we both have our Odysseys, and I'm very glad that at the very least Christopher Nolan is going to get us a lot of eyes on our Odysseys, and that's delightful.